It's like, because we talk about AI and people talk about the fear of AI and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I think we think about AI like the Terminator and all that, which is, I don't know, maybe certainly possible. But like we do all these things that make us, you know, more efficient and more productive. And at what point of that do we become machines? And maybe that's the fear of AI. I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like at what point do the tools sort of take over? And like you said before we were rolling, that we, losing that human interaction. Like I think that would, if we were going to become cyborgs or machines of some sort, I think that would be what it would be, losing that interaction with other people in the name of efficiency or productivity or whatever.
Right, absolutely. And AI is a new technology. It's a new tool in the toolbox, and in the same way, past automation kind of disrupted and changed our lives. I think AI is doing similar. But we have to remember is in the same way that cars started being mass produced on a production line.
Hmm.
Sure, a few jobs were lost because of that, but we were able to get something better from it. It was a more affordable produced car, but you also had new jobs open up that now needed to maintain those automation machines that were now on the production line. So I see that similar shift happening with AI. I don't think it's going to absolutely take over everything that we're doing. Yes, it's getting smarter, it's improving. There's a lot of cool features to it, but if we could just realign where we're having our humans handle certain tasks. They're kind of getting bogged down with your typical everyday admin tasks, the follow-ups, sometimes the research and compiling data. AI can do this for us now, so that's really cool. But we don't want that to replace that human connection. But I think the human connection piece is been happening over a decade at least. One with social media, I think two with post COVID, just trauma that we kind of experienced, and just the general uncertainty of what the future might bring. I believe us being put into a alternate reality like social media. It feels like a place, but it's not really. But we're devoting a lot more time there. We're getting distracted. We're getting caught up into their algorithms. They know how to, unfortunately, manipulate us. They know how to keep clicking and swiping and moving forward with their platform. So I just hope that the AI, the social media, we can kind of disconnect from this and get back to a lot of that human connection that we do. Because even like this, it's a virtual podcast session, but this compared to what just sending an email or an impersonal text message or just simply a post, there's a big difference when you make a personal ask, that one-on-one human connection versus something that's mass produced or not really intended for the audience. What kind of shifts are you seeing with just human behavior and that human connection?
This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944.
Well, I mean, I think you're right on the money, man. I think, like I said, my biggest thing, well, there's a fear of AI, and I think this, is that a rational thing? I mean, I don't know if the Terminator is, I don't know enough about AI to know, I think it's certainly something to be aware of. I think the bigger concern for me is us as a collective, society using AI to replace things, not the dangerous, monotonous things, but replace things like creativity or actual knowledge, or like you hear the college students using the AI to write papers and stuff. Like, I don't think we need to go down that route, because if you do that over a long enough time period, you know for lack of a better term, you're going to just kind of dumb yourself down, basically. But on the flip side of that, maybe the same concern was there when Google became a thing. When you had a search engine in your pocket and you could say, "Hey, what's the answer to this question? Let me go ask Google." Maybe, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess the difference would be, like, if you say I don't know what people do. I don't know, say that they say, "Hey, write this paper for me," but at least on Google, you had to go to different articles and find the information and put the information in there yourself. At least Google back then didn't just do the thing for you. Um, and I don't,
Yes.
I don't know, man. We talk about the AI like becoming, alive, basically. But if it influences everything that we do, and we are basically the vehicles of the message, like social media, for example. you get on social media, there's no shortage of negativity that you can see from who knows where. And then if we say that, and if we apply that belief to another person, then we then become the vehicle of that machine, basically the social media machine. So we're propagating that negativity onto other people, And so I don't know. It all comes down to, I say all that to say this, it all comes down to, just like everything else, whether it's AI or social media or, the lack of human interactions, I think we are going to be our biggest problem, just like we always are. Like we are going to be the thing, to really get in our own way.
Absolutely. And I think we can see that both with what types of tools are coming out and just the change from the dominance of OpenAI's product versus Gronk and now DeepSeek coming out as well. So one, the tools that are being created, there's AI songwriters. I'm actually using them right now, both for some background music for YouTube videos and just to make some fun content that I'm hoping to monetize later. I'm also a musician. I have a guitar in the background and I like to write music. It definitely took away a lot of the excitement of writing a new jingle or a new hit and just say, wow, I created this. But that might take 3 hours at a minimum to 3 months to 3 years. Some musicians never produce their actual product or show it to people. There's also, creating creative essays and writing papers. The benefit to, like the pros and cons of each situation here, as long as we don't lose our critical thinking ability, I feel like that can be a great tool. Just like you said, where the internet now allowed us access to resources, AI is now allowing us access to these resources. But it's also thinking 5 steps ahead of us now.
Yep.
When we ask it to write a creative essay, it's also not only creating the essay for us, but it's going to ask some questions. I'm going to need some more detail to follow up with this. But after you provide that, then they provide the full essay. They're going to provide the site links and your notations at the bottom. They're going to provide some pictures and links to other websites as resources. It's like, wow, it was thinking 12 steps ahead. Oh, and I already created like a summary and a synopsis for you in case you're using this for X, Y, or Z. Wow, holy cow. AI is kind of thinking ahead and giving us access to these tools, but it is removing some of the creativity. There was a great meme where it said, I thought AI was going to be doing my laundry and doing dishes for us. So that way I could just write poetry and write music. And then they said, instead, the AI is writing poetry and making music, and I still have to do my dishes and do all the laundry. So it's totally true. We're seeing this evolution of technology, just the shift of, as you mentioned, AI tools and just us connecting on a platform. We're the delivery vehicle, right? We made AI, we made social media. We're the ones who helped to push out this media and information. Are we the ones to blame? Isn't it kind of based off of us and what we tell it to do? And just with any tool, it can be used for good and it can be used for evil. So, for us, AI can be a great lead responder for a lot of our marketing clients. It can follow up using conversational AI, contextual quotes based on their information. You couldn't do that with the many other tools out there, or it would take a human much longer to do it. But with that being said, those same bots can be on social media platforms promoting false information, creating division or hate. But those same bots could be, saying that's a cute puppy picture, that's great, and spreading positivity. So I guess it's like, what do we use these tools for, that either promotes good or promotes evil?
Well, that's definitely a good way to look at it. I don't know if you heard that Chat GPT, they try to do some kind of maintenance or something on it, and it basically tried to replicate itself. I don't know if you heard that story. So Joe Rogan covered that on his podcast. And that's kind of alarming, man. That's a little scary.
It is. At least the headline reads that way. However, in this experiment they tried, this was actually in an isolated scenario where they kind of prompted the machine. They did it in an isolated environment. And kind of told the machine what to expect. But yes, when we kind of look at the reasoning, like when you type a prompt into ChatGPT, it'll explain reasoning. So it's like, okay, the user is asking me for this. They could be referring to this. Are they asking about this? And you kind of see the thinking process that's happening in the back end. And that's really just for us on the user front end, because there's no actual thinking being done by the machine. It's all the algorithms and machine learning that we've input into it based on the training data. it's just formulating answers, just providing the output here. So, when we're kind of using these tools in different contexts, it just kind of changes the way that we kind of think and use these tools for ourselves, our business. But yeah, it is kind of scary to think of what's next for AI, right? Like you mentioned, the Terminator. There's also Skynet. What if AI becomes sentient? Holy cow, that could be crazy, right? I always thought like, I would get banned from Whole Foods and my Roomba would stop working and I couldn't shop at Amazon because we're seeing these big conglomerate media corporations come together. Is it going to be the AI that takes over? Is it going to be the large corporations? We don't know, but technology is moving fast. AI is incorporated into almost every tool that we use, whether we agree to it or not. Some of it is great and helpful. Some of it is just a bit invasive and useless, unfortunately. Big proponent of AI and tools, but yeah, there's a lot of useless tools out there too.
Well, and that's kind of the thing. It's here whether we want it to be here or not. So now we just have to wait. But like going back to what I said though, I think, us being the thing that's going to be in our own way, I don't think it's necessarily, like you said, it's not that it's thinking for itself. My understanding is the way these large language models work is they basically search the internet for whatever the content is that you're trying to find, like the question or whatever it is. That's the way I understand it, which means that anything it can provide to you is something that a human provided to the internet at one point. That's the first thing. Or like now, I think there's a concern about governments weaponizing AI, or even just the average person weaponizing AI. Like you hear of the stories where it's like you think it's your relative or your loved one calling you for money, needing money or whatever, and people, so again, but who's behind that? A scammer, a human scammer is behind that on the other end. So again, it comes down to us sort of being in our own way. And I think, and it's been a while since I watched the Terminator, but I don't know what the thing was there. But it's like, again, like, are we talking about the AI being the robot, or do we become robots because of the lifestyle that we're living? And then you had the same, conversation with the Matrix. Are we just living in these pods and we're unaware of it? Or do we have a structure around society that we're not aware of that operates in a certain way that, so there's just different ways to take this. But before we
arguably we've been in the Matrix forever, right? It's just we've been right?
And that's the thing
before AI.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and again, the Matrix, gosh, man, we can go so many different ways with this. Like, because we run into like the simulation theory. Like, is this all one simulation? Are we like, is consciousness simulated, whatever? But look, let's just assume that everything that we know is real, like that we're real people. We live and we die, we're born and whatever. I think it's really hard to debate the life that we live is not like Matrix. It's not like it's almost, it's sort of depressing to say it's a life of conformity. But there's certain things, like you go to school and you get out and you get a job and you make money and you pay bills. Like that is a matrix. That is a matrix.
Yes.
So before we get too far away from this, because I want to give you the opportunity to do this, I give everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves and say whatever. And gave you a really good platform to introduce yourself right there. So I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Talking about AI and then you're going to introduce yourself. Like, so hopefully it didn't set you up for failure. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Luckily, my training data, my models, I'm a robot, so I can speak to this subject for you. So that's great. So my name is Chris. I built an award-winning wedding DJ business 10 years ago, grew and scaled my team to what it is today, which is super exciting. I went back to school for marketing, and that's when I started my marketing, automation, and AI agency as a pivot in 2020. Luckily, events picked up again, 21 and beyond, and growing with the marketing agency as well. My shift was to, do something that was, right now I'm local, but I'd like to switch full-time into the marketing automation side. So that way I could work from anywhere in the world. And I don't have to bear these terrible cold winters that I keep complaining about each year.
I got you. Where are you at again?
I'm in Milwaukee.
Okay.
Wisconsin. So Midwest area.
Okay. So I'm Southeast US, South Carolina. And,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's like 70 degrees a day, probably 75.
I love the weather. I love the weather on the East Coast there in the Carolinas. It is just one of the best places. You guys get a very small amount, like if anything, a little winter, but I feel like the next day it jumps up to 40 or 50 and it starts to
Yep.
melt right away.
Yep. But the summers are brutal, man. We have humidity
Really?
like so California and the West Coast, they don't have the humidity we have, at least my understanding of this. That's my understanding. It gets a lot hotter because it's like, 110 or whatever it is. But humidity is like, man, it's like a different, because I have family in California, but it's a different thing. So you mentioned DJing. I have a friend that DJs.
Yeah.
And he's all over the place. He does like nightclubs and weddings, and that's an interesting job, man.
Yeah, it was something I never imagined doing, actually. How I got into it is I used to play in a band in high school, so I had sound and lighting equipment, and I used that to kind of put on some local shows with local bands. So I did that for maybe about a year, and it wasn't until I was working in the medical field nonprofit sector. I was working in the volunteer department for our Meals on Wheels program and volunteer for home care and hospice. Through that, my boss's boss said, "Hey, I have friends who are getting married. We have a laptop with music. Do you have mics and sound and lights, right? Can you just like be a DJ for us and play for our wedding?" So I was like, sure, that sounds fun. I quoted them $300 and I was like, right off the bat, hey, if that's too much, I could lower it too. And they're like, no, that's quite all right. And this was like 2014. So that was still very low. But that went great. I realized, wow, I can actually utilize a lot of this old equipment and asset to now provide DJ services. So I started doing weddings, birthdays, anniversary parties, built a website, kind of grew my brand, all the reviews, some more referrals. And then we niched down and specialized into just doing weddings. So that was kind of my transition of getting into DJing. I was doing that part-time while working full-time, trying to get into full-time. So I went full-time in 2020. Thankfully, I was able to get through COVID, but after that, it's just been fantastic. But that's how I kind of got into DJing, taking that customer service aspect, using my passion for music, and then turning that into an in-demand service.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's because it's such a unique thing, like a unique thing to do. Because like one thing that I really admire about a good DJ is like a speaker for the same reason, but they like a human speaker, not the amplifier. But
love me some speakers.
yeah. Let me clarify. But a good one is able to like move the crowd. Like they're able to judge kind of how the audience is reacting to what's being played or said or whatever. And I just find that fascinating, especially in the like. I don't really go to nightclubs like that. When I go visit my family at this location I'm talking about, where my friend is, I'll go every once in a while. But he does the nightclubs, and it's just crazy to like watch him shift, and the entire audience, like everybody in the place, like shifts with the music, and it's crazy. Like it's like I don't even know how to describe what that's like. That's like you're like in a sea of like energy through the music, if that makes sense.
Yes. You're almost like a conductor, and like these people are kind of feeding off your energy. You're like, hey, if I tell you to like left foot or move this way, or even through the music, you can kind of control the audience. And if you're doing a great job, if you have a higher emotional intelligence, you can read the room. You can kind of know based on the age range or the demographics, or even the previous songs that they were dancing to, what else that crowd might be ready for in the next song. So it's a combination of DJs both have like 2 to 3 song mini sets. We know which songs mix well together. We could do something fun with it. But also, if that first song isn't hitting really well with the crowd, well, we're not going to go through the next 2 to 3 songs on that. We're going to switch up and go back to something that's different. But yes, you're kind of feeding off the energy of the crowd, what they're feeling. You can almost tell when they've had enough of this. It's time to switch it to that. So just kind of bearing all senses just to take in what the crowd is feeling. That allows the DJ to then switch the momentum of the evening to kind of change their set for the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a science, and like I said, there's no way I don't feel like I could do it. I mean, my friend, he does the whole like the 2 tracks and like switching the tracks and everything, like the whole thing, the whole deal.
Nice.
And it's crazy, man. He's got a really nice setup. He's got the the laptops there, and he's got 2 little disc things or whatever.
Nice.
But it's interesting to watch him do what he does, because I'm like, dude, this is fascinating to me. Like, because I mean, everybody in there is like obviously in sync with the music. Now alcohol might play an effect of that. I don't know, but like
it only helps.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't know, man. But yeah, so when you had this business, and where did you make the transition into like marketing? I guess just maybe marketing your own stuff.
Yeah. So this was my boss's boss who told me, "Hey, can you DJ my friend's wedding?" She ended up leaving her position to start her own marketing agency.
Okay.
After about a year in business, I had left my position. I was working somewhere else, but then she had a new position that opened up in her agency as like an executive assistant or admin assistant. So I joined up at a perfect time because she was able to teach me about some of the marketing trends. This was in 2016, marketing trends, technology, a lot of the internet marketing. And I was introduced to a lot of new cool tools too, like HubSpot. So that's when I implemented HubSpot into my business. I learned about SEMrush, so I started investing more into SEO. So kind of using that background, I was able to learn from her and then bring my expertise too, because I was running the DJ business. So one of my things was running Facebook ads for my DJ offer for weddings. So each campaign, I could probably get, I think one example was 8 clients from this at, I think, $750 per event. This was when I was charging a lot less, but at a cost per conversion of like 40 or $50. So that was great for me. I was doing great with Facebook ads, so I knew some of the tips and tricks that you would want to use. So that kind of like helped me realize, wow, using marketing and sales can really help my business. So that's when I kind of went full force into it. I was like, I'm going to go back to school, even just a couple classes. And there was a huge opportunity for, if you hadn't been to school yet in like 2 years, but you had good grades previously, whatever the state grants or tuition wouldn't cover, our community college was going to pick up the rest of the tuition. So I was like, wow, this is almost a risk-free opportunity for me. So that's when I went back to school for marketing because I just loved it. I was actually originally for business and switched into marketing because I was like, kind of know the business. I want to know more about marketing. So that's when I really went heavier into that. And since then, I'm just following all these Facebook groups, learning from experience and from others, getting all these cool new tools. Because we have this group that people are just sharing, hey, has anyone heard of this or tried this yet? And it's like these tools are game changers for my business. So then I like implement it for my clients too. But it's just so cool to see what you can do. And then just the evolution from, going from starting a DJ business to going into marketing to now kind of shifting and balancing a little bit of both. But it's both fun because I get to DJ on the weekends. Get to go be a part of a huge party on the weekends. And then during the week, I'm able to help businesses. So I'm building automations and technology on my computer, which is really cool. So it's a nice blend of having the fun on the weekends, which is still work, but I also have fun during the week just building stuff out.
Okay. So, what do you think? It might be kind of hard to say, something that applies to everybody, but just generally, what do you think is the biggest mistake businesses make with marketing?
I think a lot of businesses are focused too much on getting new leads instead of nurturing the ones that they currently get. So when I work with a lot of businesses and kind of assess their situation, I always ask, okay, how long does it take you to follow up from this inquiry? How many times do you follow up over what period of time? And I find that that's kind of the biggest thing that's lacking in a lot of these businesses. Even for small teams, maybe small like healthcare practices, they'll assure me, yes, we have a team to answer phones, and they follow up with their requests the same day. But when we put them through the test and the ringer, unfortunately, inquiries aren't followed up on, or I don't see continuous communication going out that helps build trust and then nurture that lead through the journey there. So that's the biggest piece. I can bring in leads all day. We can get people interested, get them to click. But what gets them into that next stage of the funnel where it says, this is the business that I want to work with. I'm confident they're going to be the solution to my problem here. And then what next steps do they need to feel like I'm being helped already? Because if you reach out to a business and it takes 1 to 2 days to get back, chances are you've already been looking at other competitors, and the first to reach out and kind of fit the criteria, you'll be the one to work with them. So I think that's the biggest mistake a lot of business owners are making is they're focusing on the new leads, but nurturing the current leads that they get can be great. And then leveraging those for reviews and referrals. This is kind of that cycle of business that we like to put them into, because I don't want to give Google or Facebook any more money than we need to. Let's build a book of business based on your great customer service and follow-up.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good point. So in my business, so I have a landscaping company and excuse me. So I'm kind of on the other end of that because a lot of our leads are like I do cold calling or cold approaches or stuff like that. So it's a little bit,
oh nice,
it's a little bit on the other end of that. But still following up, man, is like that's huge. Because like I think you're exactly right. If somebody searches for you or finds you somewhere and reaches out to you, and it takes you, I don't know, a week or whatever to get back to them, that's not going to be productive for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think now that I'm talking about this, I've had a lot of people in the landscape, and this is usually like residential landscaping clients
Mm-hmm.
will tell me that, hey, I called another guy or whatever and never heard from anybody. And, it was like 2 weeks or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I hear that a lot.
And then you're like, thank you for the business, but
Yeah.
that's that's a
Yeah.
benefit to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, man, I'm really big on communication, with clients, open communication. Sometimes it might not be what they want to hear, but hey, we got to make sure that we're on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say it's not what they want to hear, like, if we have a problem or something like that, we need to communicate and know that things are rescheduled or whatever. But I don't know, and I'm not in your space, but just like being in the entrepreneurship space, I think a lot of business owners have an issue with communicating for sure. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if that's just, because they can't keep up, there's too much, they don't have a good CRM or whatever it is. Or it's just maybe, I don't know, maybe they just don't want to, say, hey, we can't, we're behind or we can't get to you or whatever it is, So,
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. But that follow up is so important. And specifically for your situation, just like you described, someone finds us on Google and reaches out, and
mhm.
that's that point of that follow up and nurturing. But for you, you're doing the cold outreach first. So you're the one initiating that first conversation. They obviously haven't consented or opted into a lot of your email or any sort of communicative follow up for you. But it's that first touch point that you have with them. Typically, when you get back into the office, after work, and you're like, I need to bring in some more business. Do you pull out that spreadsheet of new leads, or do you pull up your CRM and take a look at which ones were already kind of warm, which ones I've been having conversations with? Because most of the times I hear it's the new leads.
Yeah. So, excuse me. Yes, that's a good question. So with the niche that we're sort of in, the commercial and the industrial space, a lot of these, I have a process that I go through which qualifies the leads, and then a lot of these places, they're not really interested unless something happens with the current person they have, or a year later when the proposal, the bids come back open for read. So
Mhm.
it's tricky, man, because if you can't get it in on that first time, you might have to wait a whole nother year before it becomes available again. But
Yes.
yeah, I do have a process that I follow to keep up, keep track with, who's been contacted, that kind of stuff.
Very nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we work with businesses too, is kind of understanding their buyer's journey. Okay, what does it look like for, a business to consider you for that? So yeah, that year follow up when the proposal comes, I'm sure you reach out probably maybe 9 months before and say, hey, I want to be submitting a new proposal with you guys. Is there a deadline for this? You're just kind of reaching out, providing value. Oh yeah, I noticed when I was on your property doing the quote, there's this plant that isn't looking that great. I recommend here's some tips to kind of take care of that one for you. But anyways, I'm going to submit that proposal in about a month, which is perfect.
Mhm.
But you're providing the necessary follow-up purpose for that audience, for that buyer's journey.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I've actually had pretty good results from offering value. I don't want to say without anything expected in return, but just like you just said, a general insight, that really goes a long way with
Yes.
people.
Yes, absolutely. It shows that you care, and that your follow-up message wasn't about, hey, did you buy yet? We're available. Do you want to buy? And you're like, no,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I was thinking about you. This made me think of you. And here's something of value that can either educate or entertain you, provide you some value. And that's the kind of resources we like to build. So for my wedding DJ business, our typical time frame is about 3 to 4 weeks for a couple to make a decision from when they make initial point of contact. From there, we're going to follow up with helpful blogs. So we give them blogs on how to plan some music. Here's your top 30 slow dances. Here's some things that might be helpful along for you in your journey. So that's kind of the way that we provide value through the nurturing. And then the blogs are a great option as a resource, both for nurturing the leads, but also current clients, because now that becomes a resource for, hey, what kind of slow songs do you recommend? Hey, I have a blog for that. So that's perfect. So anything that you can provide value, especially that personalized touch point for some of my marketing clients, I'll do like a free little SEO audit, or I'll do an update for them. So maybe they had my package for 6 months, and they're waiting to see that next step. So I'll follow up and say, hey, I noticed this about your keyword. Just want to give you an update. So anything you can do to provide value through that experience, I think just helps build that trust in that experience between the client and the business.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. I know I kind of had to learn the hard way about building those relationships up, build it because I mean I, like yes, you're trying to sell a thing, a product or a service, but there's also something that's very repulsive about just like a person who's just really just trying to sell you something. Like I've
Yes.
said before, and I'll continue to say, like one thing that will turn me off from doing business with someone quicker is someone who just can't take no for an answer. Because like even if I'm not in a place where I need your service right now, if I ever get there, I'm probably not going to call you because you just, I mean, I don't know. There's just like, I don't know. There's something about that, and I don't really know what it is. I mean, it's like,
Hmm.
so I have the philosophy of like trying to solve a problem for a person.
Hmm.
Obviously, the understanding is that you're going to get paid for it to do this thing, but it's like at the deeper level, I think you're trying to solve a problem this person's experienced. Like with the example you just gave about the music selection. Well, that's probably a huge concern for somebody who has a wedding. They want everything to be right, everything's got to be a certain way, and so you're probably alleviating some of that anxiety by saying, "Hey, I have a blog for this. This shows you sort of what to expect or what I recommend or whatever." That's a really good idea, by the way. Uh,
Thank you.
but yeah, so I mean, it's just it's. But I think people will be more open to spend money with you when they see that's not what you're all about. And obviously you have to have make a profit and that kind of stuff. But it's like I don't know, man. It's just like the whole used car salesman thing about like just I don't know. There's just something about that. It's just
which which I used to do, and I hated myself every day doing it. But it was one of those things where I was like, oh, decent or income potential, and I want to give it a shot. And my managers were always pushing me like, say this exact phrase, say and then do nothing and do this. And then I appreciate the advice and the coaching, but I always try to remind them that I don't think my buyers are like this. I don't think that's going to work on them. I think we should take a different approach. But that was always a struggle and kind of feeling like sales being sales.
mm,
The trick to sales is to make it not feel like sales, right?
yep.
You're either super excited to talk about the product or service that you're offering because one, you're on a mission because you think it's going to help people and it's going to benefit them. And it's kind of like similar to dating. I don't know if you have a partner or if you're married, but it's kind of like in the dating world. If you walk to someone at the bar and say, you want to F? Well, that's not going to work, right? Right? You're going straight to the point. Hey, do you want to buy this thing? No,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. Hard pass. In fact, let me block you from every
Right.
social media possible. Versus, hey, how are you? Let's make conversation. Let's see if this person is even interested in learning more about that person. So same for a business. Do you go in asking more questions than you are giving answers? Are you kind of leading that conversation to make a logical next step as to either this product is a great fit for you, or
Mm-hmm.
honestly, if I'm looking at your situation, I don't think what we have is going to be a good fit. Or are you trying to make that piece fit with these pre-scripted questions? There's a balance between sales, but if you're excited about what you offer, if it provides value to a lot of people, you can find that balance between making sales not feel so salesy. I think there's a big benefit to just being more natural, casual, let that relationship build, and then naturally a little bit later, then we can talk, okay, what are you doing after this? My place or yours?
Well, and I think another big point too about this is, and I know you probably know this in the B2B space, but man, these people that make these decisions or that you talk to, that you reach out to, they have so much going on. And the last thing they need is another person that day trying to sell them something because they've already had 50 people before you try to sell them something, And then here you come at 4 p.m. and it's like, dude, do I really have to do this again today? Like 100, this is my 101st time today. Do I really have to do this today again? And
Yes.
so it's just, and that's kind of like where I'm at with this stuff, man. It's like, as business owners, or if you have your own, entrepreneurs or whatever, you are like inundated with people who want to, especially like now, if you have a cell phone number on Google, you are just like overloaded with people trying to, tell you how your Google's performing and all this kind of stuff, and trying to sell you all this stuff. And like, look, I get it, man. I don't know. I have a person that does this. I'll talk to him about it. I don't know, but man, like so many people call you, and it's just, and I get this a lot with the podcast. I don't know how people get my email for the podcast because I usually give that to somebody that's like interested. But
Mhm.
random people will email me and be like, "Hey, saw your episode with so and so. I have a person that might be a good fit." And I never know if this is a real thing. Is this is this like spam? I don't know. Because most people, there's like Facebook groups and stuff like that, Matchmaker, like stuff like that, Podmatch and stuff that we get the guests from, but yeah, I don't know. It's just like some of the emails, man. It's just like I don't know. Like, is this a real thing? I don't know. You know.
Absolutely. It could be either, but I do know that there are AI tools that could basically scan a podcast, grab a guest name, and dynamically insert it into a conversation. Hey, first name, I was just checking out podcast episode name. Love what you have going on. I wanted to offer a guest. So it could either be pre-scripted, it could be a bot, could be spam. I think they're
That's
just doing
almost
outreach.
verbatim what that's almost verbatim what's sent to me.
Because I get those too.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, man, you know, like I don't even know how this person or the AI or whoever gets my email. I don't know how it gets my because I don't think the email is listed publicly anywhere. I don't know. It's obviously somewhere. I mean, I don't know.
It's possible. Yeah, there's either a public booking link available, or maybe someone put your info into their system, and maybe their system talks with other systems for data enrichment. Maybe like a HubSpot. I don't know what the collection practices are, and who owns what data. But it's either publicly available, or they scanned it or found it somewhere, or maybe they scanned an email. Who knows what the data collection that's going on? But I get similar emails as well, and I'm also tasked with the task of trying to connect and reach out with businesses. Right? How do we do that naturally? For years, it's kind of like that evolution of media and channels. For years, 10 years ago, cold email could be a great option for connecting with business owners and kind of developing that conversation with a pre-qualified, sales ready lead to have a conversation. If you get your audience, your offer, and your messaging right, that can be a great option. Or Facebook ads. If the price is right and under, X amount of dollars, you could actually scale and get the right audience with the right offer and the right message together. And for your situation specifically, the cold outreach is great because you're like, hey, I just need that introduction, a foot in the door. Think about me in the future, and then I'll follow up later, right? The flip side to that, the cold calling, is also the inbound side. So like where you said someone Googles you, finds you online, and they reach out because they're interested in services or something. I like the second option the best. But it takes some time for that SEO to kind of build up naturally. So that way you're showing up for search results like, commercial landscaping near me or near city name. So those are all the things that did well for me with my wedding DJ business, doing organic search SEO. That was a combination of the blogging, social media, Google business profile enhancements, all the fun stuff into SEO. But that's where a lot of my leads come from. So that's definitely a channel I want to continue on, but there's benefits to building relationships and doing some cold outbound as well. So combine that with, maybe I'll reach out to a past venue that I've DJ'd at and just thank them for the opportunity, compliment their staff for the great job that they've done. Just a touch base point. Hello, how's it going? From there, those relationships turned into preferred vendor relationships. So I was able to get on a preferred listing of, between 1 to 3 DJs that are recommended for this venue. So that's, a great option, to combine some of the cold outbound, doing some of the warm organic lead search, doing some relationship building. I feel like you never want to put your eggs into one basket,
Right.
just to kind of, diversify a little bit can only be helpful to you.
Mm. Yeah. I don't know, man. I've just never personally liked sending out cold emails. I just, I feel, at least in the industry that I'm in, I feel like the lead, the value, the quality of the lead is proportional to the effort that it takes to get in front of that lead. So,
Yeah.
if you get a lead from like an in-person interaction, usually in my experience, you're going to have a much better chance of doing business with that person versus a cold email. Because like me, man, I know there's AI tools for this, but I am my own AI tool when it comes to this. Because if I see an email that's trying to sell me something, I'm like, all right, that's it. Because I mean, even if it is something that I'm interested in that I feel like I need, it's going to be hard for me to trust that.
Yes.
And I can't be the only person who feels that way about those things.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm not only a giver, but a receiver of those email as well. And like I was mentioning, cold email was better 5 to 10 years ago, but the times are changing. Those emails are just not as effective as they were before. So either you have to employ a different channel, or you have to look at different messaging. What things are you doing to take it to the next step? A lot of people are, again, focusing on, how do I sell this person? And they just brain dump their ideas, the pain points and features, benefits, and are you ready to buy? As opposed to, is there a more natural way to get a one-on-one with this business owner to talk about some of their pain points or some things that can naturally progress into a potential sales conversation. One great way, one is podcasting. That's an opportunity. Two is either offer something free or of value, or things that they can benefit from, or potentially some other value driven opportunity. But people are going for the sale too often, and they should focus on a reply, as opposed to that effort. But again, with the cold emailing, you have to remember that it's a different strategy. So how we kind of implement that, and it's kind of like based on the right use case. There's a time and place for some cold email. More often not, we find it's better for lead nurturing and follow-up as opposed to kind of that direct one-on-one approach.
Yeah, I get that. You mentioned podcasting, and I think sometimes people get upset with me because. So I got to tell you this story, and I've told this story on the podcast before. So I didn't realize that people use podcasting as a lead generation, which I'm okay with. That's fine, whatever. But I'm only okay with it if the person that you're talking to, whether you're the host or guest or whatever, knows that you're in this sort of business. Because what I don't respect is, like, there's a lot of people in the podcasting space who are a host, who host a show, and the guest that's coming to talk to them has no idea that this person is in this space. And then they go through this thing. Sometimes they even pay to be on these shows, and then they're trying to sell them a thing. I don't really, because that would be like the equivalent of, let's see, I don't even know something that would be the equivalent of. That would be like if you don't know I'm in XYZ business and I invite you to a thing, and then you get there and I'm like, hey, by the way, you want to spend some money?
Like, yes. Like, it's kind of like,
yeah, but it's a little bit different. So like, and I don't want you to get offended with this because like your situation, we talked, and I think we both knew where we were at prior to this. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where the person is completely they're like unknown completely what this person does. And what you think you're doing is you're going on a podcast as a guest to have a good conversation, talk about whatever topic, whatever. But the reality is you're entering into a lead generation tool and you don't even know it. And I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe the problem is me here, but I don't respect that.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you're wrong here, because I feel the same way. When I started had this podcast, it was me and my buddy. We just had an excuse to both be entrepreneurs and talk about business stuff. So that was our first year. Second year, I started inviting some of my friends who were in business to be guests on the podcast. That's when we took it to the next level to start inviting guests to the podcast, just have a conversation. I don't use that type of sales funnel tactic, and I see the others who are doing it, and even worse than what you just described. So as you described, what I'm seeing other people do is either the podcast doesn't exist or they won't tell them the name. They're literally just trying to get a one-on-one meeting with you, right? And they also ask you pre-qualifying questions to see if you're a right fit to potentially buy a product from them, right? How many years in business? What revenue are you doing? How much have you invested in yourself? XYZ, right? But we get to the pre-interview meeting, and it's just them putting you through the sales funnel, through the sales tactic. And I'm not about that. They're just pitching their service, and then they'll say, hey, I'm going to send you a link to schedule the episode. And the link never comes. So unfortunately, they're faking podcasts in order to get a one-on-one conversation, which is not cool. For us, I've always accepted almost any guest onto our show. We want to give you a platform to talk. We invest 4 hours into each episode, from the recording to the editing to the publishing to the scheduling, everything that's involved. So yeah, there's a time commitment that we're putting in, and that's kind of the cost benefit for us, is that we obviously get to have conversations with business owners who are trying to market themselves, but we're never going in for a hard sell. We talk about what we do. If you're interested, we can chat later. But it's not, we're not pre-qualifying our podcast guests to be a fit for our marketing efforts. Like, that's just crazy. So they're faking podcast shows. I know what system they're using. So I'll send you a message on what podcast domain name not to accept invites or guests from, because unfortunately they have an ulterior motive. So I'm not about that being sneaky. Like, that's not why I got into marketing,
but like, man, so you being in the marketing space, is that not like, I guess it's maybe not illegal, because you're not really, it's not like they're taking money from you. I mean, I don't know. Some of these podcasts you do have to pay for to be on. And so is that not like a scam, or like, I mean, something's got to be.
It's fraud at even the most basic level, yeah, it's deceptive and it's fraudulent. If you're not receiving what was offered or promised
Mm,
in the service, absolutely. So yeah, if they're taking money and you're not receiving content, or anything along those lines where they're not delivering on the promise, that I would feel like that would be a breach of contract, and
mhm,
you would have a right to. I always recommend putting your payments on credit cards, so that way you have fraud protection and chargeback opportunities. So if they didn't deliver on the product, just do a chargeback on your credit card. If you can't get resolution directly through the podcast person, yeah, it's deceptive, and unfortunately, it's not any different than what happens in any other product or service
mm,
that's sold. From car sales, where yeah, it runs great. It just did this, and brakes look good. That's kind of subjective, and you get podcast hosts, whatever service or industry you're in. There's always some sort of deception. We can experience buyer's remorse, and it just doesn't feel good at the end of the day being on the receiving end of that, right? And you're like, wow,
yeah,
I
for sure.
I kind of got swindled. I was lied to,
Hmm.
and this is where we're at. It's unfortunate.
The thing is, man, that like it kind of sets it like gives the rest of us a bad name, I feel like, because
Yes.
if enough people do that and enough people have that experience, and then you or I try to invite somebody on our podcast, they're like, okay, what are you selling me? It's like, no, man,
Yes.
I'm just trying to genuinely have a conversation with you, talk, entrepreneurship or fitness or whatever we're talking about. Um, and I don't know, man. So I had this experience one time with a person, and we did this little pre-call thing. I went to talk to this person, and it was about, hey, who are you? What's your story type thing. And so we talked maybe 10, 15 minutes. And I made the mistake of mentioning that I had just started a coaching business, an online coaching business. Oh boy, that was a mistake.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I
Oh no.
appreciate it. No, not in this situation. So we spent the next 30 minutes. So this was a 45-minute call we spent on this call. And this person was basically trying to sell me so what they did was coaches. So coaching
Mhm.
coaches, that's what they did. So I was like, oh boy, here we go. And so we did this thing for 45 minutes, and it got down to the point to where they were like, okay, well, I don't think you're a good fit for the podcast right now because XYZ. I was like, okay, well, fuck you too, I guess. I don't know.
Uh-huh. You're only not a good fit because you're not a potential
A
client, right?
customer. Yep. That's it.
That I despise that as well. It is
Yep.
absolutely terrible. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you sit through this 45-minute presentation, and yeah, you feel like you got to bend over backwards for these guys to like get into their circle, and
Mm,
that is not the key or ticket to success. You don't need to run in those circles and
mm,
use deception in order to get sales. That is a very short-sighted business plan. For me, it was all about making short-term sacrifices for the long-term gains.
yep.
So if I need to provide some discounts up front, or maybe value offer, doing anything I can to build that book of business, the reviews and referrals that I would get. It's not a long-term strategy if I'm gonna be shady or not deliver on my promise for services. That's
Yep.
just absolutely crazy. But I feel like we need to either name and shame or create like a group of people who are against those people, so we know not to run with those circles. Let's provide domain names and emails of anyone we've been unfortunately not served by, and let's make a list to not work with them again, because I feel like they'll run out of prospects pretty quickly if the world kind of knows what they have going on.
Yep. And by the way, we're not like this person, their program, I think it was like a 12-month, 6 or 12 month, and we're talking about tens, like I think it was like $30,000 is what this 12-month thing. And I was like, really? Is that a real thing right now? Like for real? And because I mean, 2,500 bucks for 3 months or whatever it is, 5,000. I've heard five. I mean, it's all over the place. It's like the Wild West with the pricing. But
Uh-huh.
yeah. So I don't know, man, because I'm kind of like in a space like the coaching space is like a lot of coaches use a podcast as lead generate and like whatever. If the person knows you're a coach, that's fine. I'm okay with that. That's honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I do a lot of my marketing for coaching like in person. I'm in networking groups and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do a lot of my stuff is face to face for my coaching business, although it is online.
Mm-hmm.
And my plan is to sort of use like my podcast is like a couple things for me. One, it allows me to learn from other business owners from their experience and that kind of thing, and maybe provide
Mm-hmm.
value on my, for myself. Two is I think the whole reason I started this podcast was so that I could do that, learn from other people and talk to people. It originally it started with me, kind of like what you were saying, people I knew, like business owners I knew. And I realized really quick, I didn't know as many people as I thought. So I had to go online and start looking for other people. But also too, I'm kind of seeing this, like, one thing I really like about this with my coaching business is if I come across a potential coaching client and they're not a good fit, I'll say, hey man, I did this podcast with Chris. I think he would be a much better fit for you. And so it just, I feel like everybody benefits from this,
Yes.
So yeah.
And I like
go
to
ahead.
take that approach as well. Even someone I'm talking to in just another channel, even if I don't think there might be a good fit or a potential client, but even if it is a potential client, rather than put them into like a sales meeting with me, I'm like, why don't you kind of like come join our podcast first? One, we're going to, have a meeting anyways. Let's record it and let's use this content to leverage those assets to promote you. So that always seems like a great fit, an excuse to have a conversation already. But it's a great way to kind of have those one-on-ones with the right people. And then share that content with the world. And I learn a bunch from other people as well. Similar to your situation, wow, my circle of business owners ran out pretty quick on people that I wanted to cross promote. And I was like, oh, we're kind of, in the same competition. So I can't promote you too much, but yeah, but it's been nice. And I didn't know about the coaching. Now I don't feel hurt that I didn't know about that before. I just thought you were a cool dude with a podcast. So I don't care what jobs you have or services you have. That's okay. I didn't need to know about it beforehand. No, okay. I think it slipped my mind.
Okay. Yeah, I thought
but it's very cool.
Yeah. So I use a calendar system, and it's supposed to send automated emails and stuff, and it's supposed to have on there like a little bit about me and all that stuff. But yeah, I started it last year. Specifically with so my niche is going to be like early entrepreneurship, like there's people who are, trades, early entrepreneurship, really kind of just getting started. Cause I don't know, man, I learned a lot over the past 10 years, cause I've actually had this is 2025 is 11 years I've had this landscaping company.
Congratulations.
And yeah, so it's been a ride for sure.
Yes. And that's the benefit, is that you can take those 11 years of experience and then help other entrepreneurs apply that to their business. Because I'm sure if you started a new business, even again tomorrow, you could bypass a lot of the mistakes that you made previously, and what to do. You'd have more clarity and direction right off the bat, which is the benefit to having a coach to kind of teach you, here's the things I learned 11 years of business and what's been working for me and what doesn't.
And that's that's just it. Like I say all the time, like, man, I wish I knew then the things I know now. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe somebody else can know the things that I know now. So that's kind of the whole thing. But I don't know, man. It's just like, but also something else is I really just like doing this podcast. I like doing it. Like this thing is not monetized or whatever, but it's just something I like to do, to meet these people. And usually, at least what I'm told is, they enjoy the conversation as much as I do. So, and like I said, you don't know who hears what and who might benefit, and who can, hey, I saw you on the podcast, whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's, but I kind of feel bad that you didn't know about the coaching.
No, I was like, oh, that's something cool. It probably just slipped my mind, but it just related to the, I hate podcast hosts who don't tell them about who they are. And I was like, I just learned you're a coach, but it doesn't make you mad. It doesn't make me mad. Like, it's okay. Like,
yeah, I can find some cool stuff. Now I feel like that guy. Yeah.
No. I was just teasing you. No, again, I just love these for the great one-on-one conversations I can have with people. This sure beats, prospecting or cold emailing or cold calling other people. Again, you never know what kind of relationships you can kind of build from, Facebook groups and podcasting, things like this. Last 2 weeks ago, last month, actually, because of a podcasting Facebook group, I just mentioned I was available for speaking events. Here's the topics that I like to speak about. I was asked to speak at a virtual summit on AI and technology for nonprofits. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. So that's what that opportunity opened up for me. And I think because of the podcast, repurposing that content and putting that out there allowed me to position myself as, a trusted expert or authority leader on certain topics. So it's a benefit for the guest who comes on for the free content. For us as a host, we can highlight ourselves and what we do. And we're just building nice relationships. all the guests that I've talked to, there's always like a follow-up email 1 to 3 months later, because I either found a potential connection for them, or I thought about something they mentioned to me that I was like, I think this might be helpful for you. So it's a great way. We just learn from each other. Nothing like podcasting. This has been excellent.
Man, I tell you what, I like, it's so crazy because there's like probably a couple times a week that I will have a conversation with somebody and I'll be like, yeah, I actually talked to somebody on the podcast about that. Like, you should go listen to that guy. And it's not that I'm trying to plug myself or grow the show or anything, because these people, they almost always know that I have a podcast. It's like family and, close friends or clients or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I actually had a conversation with a guy about that. Like, you should go check that out. Cause it's, I don't know, man. It's like I think it's a good way. I don't think it's used like, so this is a marketing question for you, because I think if we used podcasting the way we probably could, we could, come on a podcast, present ourselves, and then use that to potential clients and say, hey, well, if you're interested in my service, go check out this thing I did or whatever. And they like, just like right now, we're having a real conversation. We're laughing, or whatever. Like, I'm being called out for not telling you I was a coach. Like, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. But we're having a real conversation, and you're like, hey, here's an hour I talked to this guy. If you want to know about, even though we didn't get into the technical stuff, I think it makes each of us like real people. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
there's an openness to this. It's not like, because if you go into a sales call, man, I'm not saying it's scripted, but you're going to be on. You're going to be on for that. You know what I mean? But I think if people see you open and vulnerable, I think you're able to build a better relationship with that person. And that's why I learned early in business. I actually did this for like the first 5 years. I remember like talking to people, trying to sell things, and I was so worried that I would like say the wrong thing or like, slip up or whatever. And now, man, I'm just like, I'm not a jerk or anything, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's a different thing now.
You just feel more confident in your ability to sell, and it's no longer, I'm trying to push you to buy something, but it's more, this is what I recommend for you situation. And it's worked for, the past 100 businesses I worked for, the other partners I've worked with. This is just, it makes the most sense. So when you can kind of find that right product fit for the client, it just makes sense, and you're more confident in delivering that message as well. Kind of same for wedding DJ services as well, where, as prices increase, it's kind of, your ability to deliver on that promise. How confident are you in your service? So yeah, if you could deliver that great experience, experience comes over time through kind of the selling practices. And the podcast is a much better way to be more human, as opposed to any sales call, any sort of pre-scripted or any conscious, knowing that you're being recorded for, maybe a little pitch, or if I want to make a YouTube video. I speak very differently when I'm talking to a human on the other end, or if I think I'm talking to a video script, or, I just know it's made for that purpose. This is much more natural compared to how I might present a different video or a sales call. It's more human. I like this. People want to see that, because they're not just investing in your business, but they invest in you too.
Right. And I was going to say, I think people are craving that. I think we're craving that, human aspect of a person. I think you saw this in this last election. Both sides, whether you thought they were right or wrong, one thing you couldn't really deny was that they were like a lot more open. They were just like, I don't know, because politicians never really seem like there's always a facade. You know what I mean? Like, there's just like a clearly a thing there. But like this past time, man, it's just like on both sides, you're like, damn, did he really just say that? Did she really just say that? It's just like they were just open. I felt like.
It quickly went from like watching like a professional live conference that's being televised into a Jerry Springer show, where it was like, you're rooting for either side, and you're like, suddenly there's something new that comes, like, oh dang, I didn't imagine that. Yes. So yeah, it's either a clever shift in the way that they're trying to communicate and resonate with their audience, with the voters, or is it that they just don't care anymore? I think it's for the votes. They wouldn't. I think the facade was for the votes. I think the things that they say are for the votes. When they get in office, I think they do a really great job of ignoring the voters and making sure that they're donors are well cared for. Unfortunately,
Mm.
we see it all the time. I mean, all these politicians, they start with yearly salaries of what, 100K, and after 4 years they're worth 30 million. Like, something does it, like
Yeah.
I wasn't the greatest at math, but dang, holy cow.
Yeah, something's clearly going on there.
Yeah.
Look, man, I got to close out in a couple minutes, but it's been
Yeah.
a phenomenal conversation. I wanted to ask you really quick before we close. There's a couple things I want to ask. One is automation. You mentioned automation. You help people with that. What do you do there?
Absolutely. So this is all about helping to capture, nurture, and then convert more leads for a lot of the businesses, take a lot of the admin processes out. All about focused on providing value through the buyer's journey and then saving the business owner tons of time. So this could look like maybe we install a new form on your website. Maybe we introduce a new onboarding process that involves forms that now hook up to automation and AI. So that way these systems and proposals and communication pieces just kind of work all together. So that frees up a lot of the human time that's spent in a lot of these tasks. So that way they can focus more on building the relationships, providing more human touch points, as opposed to, the non-alternative. So doing the automation has been great for a lot of businesses. I love working with it. Some people are like blown away by some of the things that you can do with technology. I'll just say, here's what I did with this. And they're like, oh my goodness, that's possible. I'm like, you guys didn't know that? That's so cool. But it's nice to share our knowledge with each other. And I'm learning from other big tech entrepreneurs as well about what they're working on. So it's a nice collective to kind of share the knowledge. I do have some videos available on YouTube on how I build out some of these automations. So anyone who isn't ready to pay an agency, you can learn how to build a lot of these automations on my channel as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that's a good segue into this. If you have any links that you want to share, if you want to call them out now, and you can, and also I'll attach them to the videos too, if you send them to me.
Perfect. That'd be
Yeah.
excellent. So people can find me online through LinkedIn, Christopher Troka or Chris Troka. I'm sure if you just Google my name, Chris Troka, Troka, I'll pop up. And our business name is focus-biz.com. That's where we offer a lot of our marketing, lead gen, automation services on there as well. So encourage everyone to check it out. Let me know if you have any questions. Hope you enjoyed the videos. And those are on focus-biz.com for YouTube as well.
Okay. Nice. So one thing that I ask everybody before we close, if you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it could be something from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career. What do you think is one of the most valuable lessons, most important lessons you ever learned?
Just take action. There's something to be said about the hands-on experience that you get from taking action, both from the feeling great from the dopamine and the satisfaction you're getting from doing it. But there's something that books and videos and other things just can't teach you, except through hands-on experience. So I recommend to people, if you're kind of stuck in a planning phase, you're thinking about launching this, and first, don't beat yourself up on the timeline. Things will kind of happen when they do. But once you get that motivation about this idea or project you're working on, stick with it, see it through, follow it through. Because I can tell you how many campaign ideas and initiatives I wanted to put out there that I revisit. And I'm like, wow, this whole thing was absolutely like 99% built, but I never pushed it out there because I either got distracted or found another shiny object. So just get out there, take action, learn from that experience, and that will help you expand your business to new heights.
Yeah, that's really powerful, because that action doesn't have to be a huge thing either. It can be like one day might be 10 miles, one day might be 10 steps,
Yes.
I think it's just, because like, I think people talk about, I say this a lot, people talk about consistency a lot. And I think consistency is better understood as a direction versus an action,
Yes.
because those days that you don't want to show up, man, that you do show up and you do just something, just anything in that direction. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's
Like,
a very important part.
Yeah, you don't need 10 miles consistently each day or 10 steps each day. Just show up each day. Put some, give 100% of what you're willing to put in that day. If you only have 60% to give, you're literally giving 100% of everything you have available. So you showed up 60%, that's 100%. Keep with that.
Yeah. Even if I got a promotional video that I'm working on right now, and I have probably recorded this thing 3 or 4 times, but the last time I did, I was like, man, I'm not feeling this today, but I forced myself to do, and it's like a 20-minute video. Like, I'm going through this 20-minute presentation basically. And I was like, dude, I like, this is going to suck. This is not going to be the take that I'm using. Like, I don't want to do it, but I did it anyways. And after I did it, like, first of all, I felt better because I pushed myself through it. But then I was like, I had a revelation because I was like, okay, I need to tweak this part of this. Like, and I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have had that had I not forced myself to do it that day. You know?
Yes, yes. There's always a million excuses to wait until tomorrow to do something, or
Mhm.
we kind of overestimate how long we think it might take to work on a project or a task, or it doesn't, it doesn't excite us, so we don't do it, and therefore we avoid it. But once we get into it, things I avoided, thought it, thinking it would take 2 to 3 hours, took me 15 minutes, and I'm thinking to myself, why was I so scared to even get started on this? Once I did it, I finally did, and again, once you go through those fun projects, especially creative ones, those are okay to edit with and come back to a little bit later. The creative process is totally different, as opposed to just like trying to output something. But yeah, once you kind of get in that mode, your brain starts firing on different cylinders, and there's making these connections. And now suddenly, you're taking that script or that idea into a whole new level. You're adding some new graphics. Here's a new transition. You're seeing it in a whole new different light. But I definitely agree with just taking action is kind of that foundational piece to making progress.
For sure, for sure. I think it all happens through action. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think action is what brings the idea to a reality. Because we can.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to sit around and wish and hope and everything, man. That's all good, but like the action is what makes it happen. What makes it real.
Yep. I can't tell you how many business owners have come to me with a great idea, and a lot of great ideas exist, but unfortunately, it's up to the execution. I'm sure you're familiar with. Have you eaten a Hydrox cookie recently?
Hydrox?
Yeah, Hydrox.
No, I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, they were the first person to create a chocolate circular shaped cookie with a cream filled center to it, and then Oreo came along second, and they made it much more popular.
Huh? I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah. Hydrox was the original chocolate-shaped cookie with the cream-filled center. Oreo came, but I think that shows that you don't have to be the first to something. You can come in later if you have a different brand. If you bring a different energy to the table, it's your unique positioning that you're bringing. So it doesn't matter really the product. How do you dress it up? How do you deliver it to people? People are investing in you and the business, the brand, what they feel and think about you. So the more you can put out there, the more human you can be. There's a great book called The Most Human Company Wins. I can't remember the author, but those practical details there really outline how businesses should be looking to connect individually with their audience, as opposed to kind of this blanket mass branding messaging that has worked for the past 10 to 20 years. It's just changing now.
Listen, man, we could keep going. I mean, we've covered so many areas. But I do have to get out of here in a couple minutes. If you want to, like I said, if you send me everything, I'll attach it to the videos. Let me explain to you how this upload works. I think
Perfect.
I think you look pretty good on your end as far as uploading goes. But definitely appreciate the time and the insight here today. Appreciate a good conversation, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Sounds great, Cody. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey everybody, listen, I really appreciate you guys tuning in today, man. If you like the content, if you found this episode useful, you can visit us on social media. That's YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, Amazon Music, Rumble, Instagram, Facebook, and Google and Apple Podcasts. There you can like our videos, follow, subscribe, and share. And again, we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.